Hey folks, I'm Chuck Black, and we are talking about how not to become a good programmer. And today's topic is name things stupidly. What am I talking about? Well, in order to explain that, I've arbitrarily chosen a Python program that I wrote for way far into the class that I'm doing, and this happens to be on recursion. Now, recursion can be a confusing thing. And so what I've done in here is I've attempted to name things in such a way that you get an idea what is going on. Now, if I was to name things stupidly, one thing that I would do would be something like this. What I'm doing here is changing my descriptive names to just 1 or 2 letter names. Now, since I wrote this, I can probably keep track of in my mind, at least in the near term, what S means, that it means stack, and that CD1 and CD2 refer to the current data that I'm dealing with in this recursive call, and that N is actually the number of comparisons that I've done, and that V is referring to whether I visited this node or not. I can probably do that, and I can save myself some time by changing this code throughout my code. It takes less long in order to type that stuff out. But I'm really doing myself a disservice, because what happens when I go away and I don't have this line right here to help me remember what everything is, and since it's now gone, I have to try to remember, okay, what actually was S standing for? What did CD mean? I might have to put a comment in there, but as you probably know, comments can end up lying if the code changes. So this is a very bad idea. I see it all the time. So please make sure that you name things intelligently. So let me tell you what I'm not talking about. What I'm not talking about is giving your functions names that actually do mean something but might actually be a little bit silly. I figured I had to do this because in my past, almost 40 years ago, when I wrote this high-level software, I needed to have a couple of different programs. One of them, when I encountered a fixable error that I would call, and I called it Help Mr. Wizard. I called my function Help Mr. Wizard. If you're wondering where that came from, it was a cartoon that I watched, and one of the things that would happen to this particular character would be they would get in trouble, and they would say, Help Mr. Wizard. And so that is what I called that. If I had a catastrophic error that was unfixable, then I used another phrase from my cartoon past, Exit Stage Left Eve, and that was from a comic called Snagglepuss, and he would say Exit Stage Left and always put even at the end of it, so that's what I called it. And I got a lot of positive comments. People knew exactly what it was talking about. It put a smile on their face as well. I'm not talking about that. Now, in case you think that naming is not that big a deal and that you ought to be able to go ahead and do what I just demonstrated and have everything with these obscure names that nobody can understand, and naming is not really that important, let me tell you about somebody you've probably heard of, Charles Dickens. So Charles Dickens was famous for coming up with names for his characters that represented who they were and were an indication of what was going on. And they were kind of silly names, but these were all extremely important, and he would spend a lot of time when he would write his novels coming up with names. There's even a bunch here. I could go to this link, but there's ones like Pecksniff for somebody who was a religious hypocrite, and of course you've heard of Scrooge, and that has come into our normal vocabulary. So Charles Dickens spent a lot of time on names. I think you can probably spend a little time on names and make sure that you do it the right way, and so that people can understand what's going on when they see your code, and that you can understand it too when you come back to your code after being away from it for a little while. So remember, if you want to be a friend to anybody who's going to look at your code, or to yourself when you look at it, not right at this moment, then you will name things intelligently.